Are you talking about the string?
Yes, I'm talking about the string.
That's right.
Oh yeah, the reason I called out of work because I had some medical malpractice just shove its head into my life after a decade. Yeah, I thought I had an ingrown hair at like 10:30 at night, so I'm thinking, let's just, solve this, get to bed. So get some tweezers, start poking, and start pulling on it. It's not stopping. Suddenly I have 4.5 inches of surgical thread from like 10 years ago.
4 to 10 years is a bit of a stretch, buddy.
No, 4 inches became 4 years, and circuits are getting crossed. But yeah, no, I pulled.
Yeah, you just started pulling out some neurons with it.
What did you unsuture from yourself from?
I don't know, but the blue string of fate was pulled.
It was just living in his skin layer.
So I had knee surgery, right?
I like to think that as a trans woman, I have a relatively high tolerance for like medical horror, but
So this is also why we wanted to bring this up beforehand for like, I guess, guest comfort.
Yeah, no, I'm fine, but like, what?
Yeah, around 12 years ago, I had knee surgery for an ACL that decided that it no longer wanted to be connected and become independent.
Sure, and when they like sort of did the surgical consultation, the surgeon was like, "Oh, by the way, I'm also going to leave like a bunch of string in there."
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave some mess that I found on the
just to see as a joke,
and presumably a little bit sticking out as like a pull tab for later.
Yeah, if you ever want to get rid of your entire patella in a hurry, you just like pull this ripcord and like.
Hey guys, watch this. Yank's knee, entire leg just falls apart. I have a self-destruct mechanism hidden somewhere in my leg.
I do think having an emergency release for any like prosthesis is a fun bit. Like you pull the thing, your like arm falls off. Perfect comedy.
You get to the grocery store, all of the spots are taken except the one handicap spot. It's fuck.
You just become one of those lizards that can just shed its tail and just leave behind a decoy.
It's a couple of short steps from the kind of knee ripcord to the rocket-powered arm from Metal Gear Solid here.
Oh god, please, that would be so cool.
You just have a rocket-powered knee. Just the knee joint comes off. You immediately like collapse to the floor because you've got one knee left and the other one can't bear weight. But like your knee at that moment is like rocketing across the parking lot to like punch someone.
I pull the patella ripcord, my knee hits a cop car going Mach 2.
What if you had an adapter for your other prosthetic leg so you could attach your other leg nub into it so you'd have like this Y-shaped leg structure to support yourself with after you ripcorded your other knee off?
No, it's going to be a reload for my other.
Man who says he doesn't like RimWorld body horror 2 minutes later.
Imagine your patella, but it's the low-sat missile.
My sea-skimming knee.
Just things enter into a kind of arms race, and like my patella, which is coming in like low and fast up to someone else, is defeated by a kind of like trophy system active interceptor knee joint. Just shoots a toe or something off to destroy it in mid-flight.
I feel like we're entering the non-credible realm of body modification.
Every day of my life.
No, I will have the Kinjal mounted into my knee.
Just walking around in a kind of like armor suit made of the like ERA bricks, like a Ukrainian tank. Just like a dressing gown covered in them.
I feel like ERA bricks is like a vehicular fashion statement for any Ukrainian vehicle. It's not just the tanks anymore.
Absolutely. It's a little sort of like patriotic thing.
It's going to be like a foam thing for like 30 years in the future. People just putting it on their trucks.
I was about to say, I'm imagining a future where it becomes like a throwback fashion show design, and like the woman's dress it's like green and it's designed to look like it's covered in ERA.
I think F-150 covered in like those contact ERA bricks is a fantastic look and probably exists right now in Canada.
You all know the Russian like bread van, the Buhanka?
I love a Buhanka. Yeah, it was 469, I think. Yeah. Fantastic.
Oh, I love a thin-skinned vehicle covered in ERA.
I will be hit by a single projectile and just be
killed instantly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the you can't fire me, I quit. It's like your missile can't kill me. I am already dead.
I am an active danger to everyone around.
Bumper sticker on the back of the van that's like, if you hit me, all of these contact bricks will explode, killing both of us. Let me merge or we will all die.
It's just, like Miss Ukraine 2030 trips going down the aisle. A horrible accident kills 200.
I love that, like, ERA goggles design for the van. Like, I'm sure that that's not spaced a safe enough distance to prevent to prevent the driver from having like a breakfast of fucking shattered bullet resistant glass.
As far as like really closely held explosives go, the one I always come back to is during the Operation Paul Bunyan in the Korean DMZ, South Korean Navy SEALs went into the DMZ with claymore mines on their chests and the triggers in their hands, going up to the North Koreans being like, fuck with me, fight me right now.
Would you fist fight a man with a claymore strapped to his chest?
Yeah, once.
Yeah, Chris, I was gonna say this entire conversation reminds me of that stupid picture of like the bike with the propane tank on. It's like, go ahead, hit me, we can both lose.
On the other hand, like the commanding officer could entirely have convinced those guys, like, no, claymores explode directionally; they explode outwards. So as long as you are on the opposite side, as long as it is,
I will be perfectly okay.
I will be perfectly fine. Just like a slight like square scorch mark on your shirt, and you're otherwise fine.
We had a pretty large bang associated with the caution and warning now. As we have an apparent serious oxygen leak. 4, 3, 2, 1. Houston, we've had a problem. He's in a roll and he can't stop it. Performing an evasive maneuver. Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here. We need to do a little more all-weather testing. Welcome to space.
Hello, listener, and welcome to Failure to Launch, the space history podcast where we walk you through every mistake, failure, and explosion that made modern space exploration possible. We are your hosts, Quinn, he, him.
Chris, he, him.
November, she, her.
And a content Chris. He, him.
Okay, so I read that initially, and I thought you were saying a content Chris, and I was like, oh boy, he's ready to go.
This is the power of the English language.
I'm sitting here on the floor contemplating my brick.
Yeah, it was very nice of you to invite me on.
Yeah, and today we are going to be talking about that time the CIA stole a Soviet moon probe.
I love the CIA. They're just so often up to some shit.
Oh,
know?
Especially in the 50s when we were in peak Alan Dulles mode.
Incredible, yeah.
And I've got it later. At first, whenever I was researching this story, I was like, fuck the CIA, but at least this is some real spy shit. No one's getting overthrown, no one is being disappeared or having their democratic will destroyed.
My brother in Christ, it is any percent speedrun.
I thought this was going to be like the only time the CIA did actual spying.
No, they've never really done that. They've mostly just done kind of antics, crucially, this is before they got into LSD, but which inspired a whole lot of weird shit.
If some of the stories that I have sourced for this are to be believed, and some of them are a little fantastical, they did have something like that.
Incredible.
Wonderful.
But it was deployed against KGB guys, so I almost said KJB. Fuck.
Yeah, deployed against KJB agents.
Now, November Kelly is a truly prolific podcaster, hosting such fun shows as Kill James Bond, Well There's Your Problem, and Trash Future. And she has generously set aside her time in her busy podcasting and or shitposting schedule to talk to us and you, audience. So even though we've been chatting so much already, November, thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Guys.
What?
The brain rot is just screaming this morning.
Oh, yeah?
It's a house made of bricks, but the bricks are ERA bricks.
Yeah, sort of like the sort of future Ukrainian Abraham Lincoln is going to be like, yeah, I grew up in a log cabin, except the logs are like bricks of like ERA.
The wolf did not even try to fuck with that little piggy.
The doorbell has the Claymore attachment to it.
This is the kind of level of sensitivity that everyone who posts about housing policy on Twitter operates on.
No, you see, it's wonderful. It's the doorbell that instantly obliterates any solicitor.
It's it's the expression, people who live in ERA houses shouldn't throw explosively formed penetrators.
I'm trying to decide if a separated 3-bedroom made of ERA or a Khrushchevka made of ERA is better.
Oh god, I need the Soviet era con block that's like 10 stories high.
No, perfect American like subdivision McMansion, but made out of the ERA bricks. There's a car in the driveway outside, also made of ERA bricks. Dog made of ERA bricks.
The driveway.
This is yeah. This is ERA world. It's real and it's strong and it's powerful and it's our friend.
The trees just have like a blanket laid over them that's just covered in ERA bricks.
running outside at the first snow to like catch a little ERA flake on my tongue, and it detonates, blowing my entire head off.
I don't like that. What you've done here is you've invited me onto your show, and I've introduced a kind of explosive tulpa into it, which destroying.
Remember how I said that I was confused about that? Like, I had no idea how Lions, that one episode was like, why is Elder Scrolls Dwemer shit becoming the one bit? And then it happened to us, and ERA is somehow going to be the recurring knee thread throughout this entire fucking show.
I mean, if we think about
the knee thread is also ERA.
If we think about it, ERA conceptually is incredibly popular in many spaces.
Okay, so yeah, this is actually content. This is actually a very smart move. We're gonna
in November's defense, I feel like
I don't want the NAFO crowd.
No, listen, I'm just gonna circle back to we're not derailing anything. Like, I'm like the little Ice Age squirrel stuck in permafrost, and you're just global warming come to warm me out of my permafrost state, and we're just talking about ERA in circles this morning, today, tonight, all the time.
Whatever time it is.
Whatever the time it is, it's always time to talk about explosive reactive armor.
Talk to your kids about explosive reactive armor.
You wouldn't download ERA, would you?
Just sort of like the download more RAM thing, but it's like downloading more ERA and throwing it into my army.
Because, like, conceptually, it's so simple. It's an explosion that blocks a thing. And, like, I cannot wait to see what fucking, like, Palantir comes up with to overcomplicate ERA. It's gonna have, like, IFF in it that's supposed to not detonate towards friendlies, except they're gonna do a bit flip, and it's just gonna kill everyone around it. Getting a notification as a missile flies at your tank that your subscription is up.
This is how every IDF tank works. Like... Yeah, doing like microtransactions in the sort of iPad in the Makava tank as a guy puts a red triangle over you.
No, we're going back to the Chinese Space Bureau episode, and it's just a brick of contact on a stick getting swung at your kneecaps.
Wang Binjiang with a baseball bat with ERA on it that is also covered in the devil's venom.
Knuckle dusters, but it's the brick.
Also, audience, if you enjoy this podcast and for some reason enjoy this kind of content right now, if you want to hear more of it, consider supporting us on Patreon. Signing up at any tier gets you access to our entire catalog of mostly movie reviews, KJB ripoffs, that kind of stuff.
I don't think we invented reviewing movies.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we've mostly just been talking about like dumb Soviet space movies.
What about Rico? Wait, what about Rico?
Okay, yeah, and we also talked about a kaiju movie, and Tarkovsky.
The most damp man in the world after killing his wife.
Are we talking about Tarkovsky or the kaiju movie? I can't remember.
Just a very damp Godzilla.
Did Rico kill his wife?
Isn't every kaiju movie damp, though? Like, I feel like the ocean plays a big part of it.
In overall moistness?
There's definitely dry kaiju movies, for sure. Like, Mothra is a kaiju, and Mothra is not damp. Like,
the inverse, I would say.
Flight. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just thinking, like, to every, like, Godzilla versus King Kong thing, like, King Kong must smell just awful, like a wet dog anytime he's in water.
I don't think the kaiju genre has a lot of, like, good smelling monsters in it, to be honest.
Kaiju movies smell-o-vision.
Just like a regular Godzilla movie, but like in the course of the meeting where they're devising the plan to like trap or kill Godzilla, one of them's just like can't stop talking about how good he smells. It's like it's actually sort of really good. Like,
I desperately want to see one of those the girl with the dogs videos where she does like the grooming of like the dogs and the cats and whatnot, but it's just a kaiju.
Yeah, I groomed the angriest Godzilla.
It's like trying to hiss. They put it in a muzzle. I need to drag us on track.
I was going to say one final thing.
I know.
Kaiju movies are ultimately dry versus wet if you think about it.
The real question is where it falls on the KJB dichotomy of movies, which is it about being transgender or is it about 9/11? The thing that like every movie has to be one or the other. I think generally Godzilla movies are like strongly 9/11 coded.
Because they're meant to be like a nuclear bomb, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm excited to see if they've made like a trans Godzilla movie or kaiju
didn't
movie.
we do this with the Godzilla and Kong movie recently?
Are you talking about when they made Godzilla pink?
Yeah.
I don't think that was...
That's what happens, yeah.
You just start shooting lasers?
I mean, I try not to, but like...
And audience, as we get into this, this is normally the point where I would talk about the sourcing, but I'm going to save that for later because it needs its own section because the sourcing for this is weird.
You guys have sources?
I wish we hadn't because this entire story is relying on the word of spies who are notoriously not honest.
Yeah, it comes with the job description.
Also, perversely, like paradoxically self-promoting.
Glory hounds, every single one.
I think a lot about Project Azorian, right?
Hell yeah.
The CIA, like, submarine salvage thing, which every motherfucker involved wrote a book about. You know, because in fairness, it was a very cool thing, and if you do a cool thing, you want people to know about it. But like,
just rope a billionaire into it. Just hey, you want to get it up to some shenanigans?
Yeah, but like this whole sort of like quiet professional thing is like, well,
pulling the center section of the submarine out and just whacking the top of the missile with a hammer.
The submarine is imploding around me. I pull my knee thread. The inflation device hidden in my leg rapidly yanks me up to the surface.
But that would be bad.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
I feel like at that point, it's not the bends anymore. I feel like it's more like the blows, you know? Like
Yeah, you bend, like, if anything, too much.
The string that turns me into pasta sauce.
Check this shit out, Project Kardashian. Thank you.
You put an air pump onto the knee thread and you start pumping and it just inflates your ass. All right.
Variable ass.
just they fish you out of the water as you've escaped from your submarine. They like hustling you into a hyperbaric chamber. You have a massive ass. It's like sticking up off the stretch.
Everybody is so mean to me.
The last thought going through my mind.
Yeah, in the event of an emergency, you can use it as a flotation device.
The world's most perverse shark.
I feel like if you're a shark, if you like bite into someone who's like, you know, dying of the bends, you're probably gonna like, it's gonna go off like one of those ERA bricks, right? Because there's like nitrogen trapped in the tissues.
Come full circle.
That you're releasing. Yeah. Shark with ERA brick teeth.
Chris, edit in the video of the whale exploding on the beach right now.
All right, we'll do that.
The whale is just a brick.
I have to
just a shitload of whales stuck to the outside.
It's a bombardier beetle. It's nature's ERA brick.
Space Race 1959.
Now, our story starts in a kind of less known period of the space race, 1959. Most people know about the first volley of satellites, so this is like Sputnik, Laika, Explorer, maybe Vanguard, and they know about the race to get humans into orbit. So this is like Yuri Gagarin, Vostok versus Mercury. But between those two periods was a lesser known event, the first moon race. Hot off their early successes and knowing that the ultimate finishing line for all of this was to put humans on the moon, the newly founded NASA and Soviet space program raced to... First, they were just trying to slam satellites into the moon at hypersonic speed.
We're gonna shoot the moon.
I know a product that could help the moon with those types of problems. Hey, moon, have a hypervelocity penetrator problem? Have you tried wearing an ERA vest?
Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin just getting blasted to bits as they come down for landing.
Imagine how smooth the moon would look if it was wearing an ERA vest its entire life.
I don't like the idea of a smooth moon.
Now, audience, if you want to learn more about this, please listen to our interview with space historian Drew LePage, or check out his blog, which will be linked down below. He's done a lot of work on this.
Check out the time that we invited on someone who knew what they were talking about rather than this time.
Our show does have a good mix of that, where like half of our guests are other content creators who riff with us, and the other half are like actual space historians. The only time that has somewhat mixed is the time we had Mary Roach on, who is an author who did some incredible space history work, but who also told us about the time she tried to sniff the astronauts as they came off the space shuttle, just to like learn about how they smelled, because her book was all about the space hygiene, living in space, the not fun parts.
Sure. No, it's always so good when you get like an academic who is like funny.
Oh, she was absolutely delightful.
I'm a big Mary Roach stan.
So basically, while both sides prepared their manned programs by launching dogs and chimps into orbit and sometimes recovering them, they also improved their rockets, making new designs that could loft bigger payloads further, in this case firing them directly like bullets at the moon. Now, what's relevant for our story today is the earliest launches of the Soviet Luna program. If you've heard of this one recently, it's because Roscosmos, Russia's version of NASA, tried to cash in on some good old nostalgia and renamed their lunar lander. They named it Luna 25 to make it seem like they were carrying the old torch. Now, Luna 25 failed. It slammed into the moon. It was a shit show of a program that we will definitely talk about, but in complete fairness, like 90% of last year's attempts at landing on the moon also failed. It turns out it's hard. But before all of that, the real Luna program ran from 1958 to 1976 and achieved a load of firsts for the Soviet Union, like first flyby of the moon, first impact of the moon, first orbit of the moon, first soft landing, etc.
Yeah, you can see all of those like in a handy graph anytime you like get in an argument on Twitter with someone who's a big fan of the Soviet Union.
Yeah, the podium thing going down, and they'll point like first robotic lunar sample return. I mean, why put robotic in there? Why would you have to preface that? Was there another one?
Just doing the kind of lost cosmonauts thing where they sent like one guy with a shovel up there. His dying action was to like throw like a kind of like couple of shovels full of regolith into the thing and then die on the moon completely unheralded. This is what they used to do to you if your posts were bad back in the day, and we need to bring it back.
He's just on the moon dressed up like a Chernobyl liquidator.
Grigory Nelyubov pisses off the wrong person and gets volunteered for Luna 12. Now, in complete fairness, like the Luna program, I do think is a huge achievement. Like they did achieve a lot, and by the end, people will point out like, well, they didn't get people on the moon. The Luna program was a kind of stopgap by the end because they knew they weren't going to get the manned program. So the Luna, they had to make do with what they had, and they achieved a lot with the limited resources. Now, in January 1959, Luna 1 became the first satellite to fly by the moon. It then flew out of Earth's sphere of influence, becoming the first man-made object to orbit the sun. Or as one propaganda poster from the time said, the 10th planet, a symbol of the victory of communism.
Sick. Fully sick.
Nothing but bangers.
Unfortunately, there is a bit of a lie here. Luna 1 was actually their fourth mission that they launched to try for the moon. The other satellites didn't reach orbit, so they didn't exist and never got numbers.
So what you're saying is there is a 10th planet that we don't know about.
It's still out there.
Incredible.
Also, Luna 1 was not meant to fly by the moon. It was meant to hit it. They missed, and so the propaganda guys just decided to make lemonade, and they were just like, yeah, fuck it. It was always supposed to do that.
Well, it clearly it worked on me, because I think that's impressive as fuck, and it's like based on aiming at the moon and missing is like really funny.
Iron sights on an R7.
lying on your back in Baikonur, Kazakhstan, watching the moon track slowly across the sky, and like, hold it, go.
Just getting annihilated under the rocket.
Now, a few months later in September, and there was also a failed month in June that didn't happen.
A failed month in June?
June did not load correctly.
The entire month of June.
Sorry, you know that you have me in a very in like a sort of terrible rebellious place when I'm leaping on like sort of slight like misstatements, but like
I'm just imagining they had a couple of failed launches in June, so they just go around to every calendar to rip it out like it didn't happen.
Yeah, this was extra May. It was bonus May. All right.
Hey, what did you do last month? You black bag, go.
The KGB just went to every single house in the Soviet Union and just blasted them across the back of the head with a brick until they forgot.
So yeah, they had a failed launch in June that didn't happen. So whenever they launched in September, that became Luna 2. And this one succeeded in flying directly into the moon at hypersonic speed, making it the first man-made object to impact another celestial body.
Beautiful legacy for mankind to like kind of reach out and punch the sky, you know?
They also did it in a way that created some of the coolest collector's items imaginable, and I am desperate to own one of these. See, every Luna probe carried 2 propaganda shrapnel bombs, baseball-sized spheres made of interlocking Soviet emblem medallions. On impact, the spheres broke, spreading dozens of little Luna program medals across kilometers, and also marking the first time that humanity had littered on another celestial body.
So everyone who has ever made a sci-fi game set in like our universe in our future has like been fucking up on the collectibles front. I'll say that to start with.
Oh, absolutely.
If anyone, for whatever reason, ever decides to go back to, I don't know, whatever the Bethesda space game was, I already forgot.
Starfield, yeah.
Yeah, there should be a minigame where you just trawl across the moon map looking for tiny little shiny collectibles.
Just doing it with one of those litter pickers.
It's like a metal detector at the beach, some elderly dude just walking across the moon.
Looking for the pieces of the Russian hypersonic shrapnel football.
Now, just a month later, Luna 3 became the first satellite to take pictures of the far side of the moon and transmit them back to Earth.
It's clearly like the policy of only winners get numbers is working to motivate the probes.
Just going into the workshop, you see what happened to your friend.
But yeah, so I know that is a bit of a big historical context section for us, but basically, to set the scene, it's 1959. The Soviets are solidly ahead in the space race. They are slamming propaganda grenades into the moon. And all jokes aside, they have published the first images of the far side of the moon, something no human in history has ever seen.
Yeah, no human in history has ever like fired a sort of like hypersonic baseball at the moon either. Like this is all equally cool to me.
The entire American nation is seething that they didn't get baseball to the moon first.
Meanwhile, the American response to this, Pioneer, has had 5 failed launches in a row and has, by late 1959, they have only succeeded in matching Luna 1. They put Pioneer 4 on a lunar flyby. It also missed. It was supposed to slam into the moon.
See, in American culture, it's actually a huge insult to them to prevent them from littering. So,
now, even worse, NASA was only about a year old at this point, and they were still trying to wrangle. So for context, at this time, the US had the Army, Navy, and Air Force, all of which were running their own separate dysfunctional space programs and like eating up a third of the budget. So everything was like really unfocused, and they were constantly like poaching people from each other. Ironically, later on, things would kind of switch. America would get one centralized space agency that kind of like managed everything well. And the Soviets would devolve into having hundreds of different OKBs, design bureaus, all competing and backstabbing each other and
just becoming an extremely narrowly focused materialist and supporting America in the space race on the basis that they have a more Marxist-Leninist space program, organizationally, if not ideologically.
Just naturally drifting in.
Yeah, like the administrator of NASA doing democratic centralism.
And we've talked about, the later, especially in the 70s and 80s, the Soviet space program became like corporate as shit because every OKB was just like competing, and they did hostile takeovers. One time a factory just switched teams and flew the flag for the other OKB.
I mean, one of them tried to build the Shagohod. I mean, like, it was wild out there.
I'm thinking about engineering Ronin, and we're going down. We're going down even further. Removing
it's like a hard hat shaped like a straw hat.
We're removing any other form of structure, and so we have all of the branches of the military developing their own rockets, right? But why have any structure at all? It's just like anarchist communes at the lowest level developing rocket stuff for their respective branches.
I'm going to repeat the same thing I said last time whenever Kyle first made the engineering Ronin joke of just like, yeah, it could just be a Montessori space program. You just decide like, I'm feeling like I'm feeling like today is a guidance day. This is like the dumb thing about bits is that they're basically just random word association, and sometimes
and they percolate through like loosely connected podcasts. And so, like, I've been hearing so many fucking Montessori bits over the last month or so.
I'm sorry, I review Trash Future. I review KJB.
Yeah, I bet you're Montessori, bud.
But Tish slapping my knee and it falls off.
Slapping your knee and it engages the emergency eject system.
The launch escape system built into my knee.
Slapping your knee, fires the probe, misses the moon entirely. 10th planet.
Slap my knee, the IFF fails.
Oh, no, what you need is like a new patella that's fully the like sort of a hemisphere of the Soviet like propaganda baseball. So like you get any impact, it shatters into a bunch of propaganda hexagons, and like so you just like you're like lying on the ground in agony surrounded by like scattered bits of knee that say like, Soviet Union.
I'm incredibly stuck on the concept of our entire mission purpose is to hit the moon with a probe and then just missing. Like the entire like that's like the entire reason for the missions being is we have to hit the moon. And it's like sir, we missed.
Sooner or later, just taking a sort of philosophical conservation of momentum thing attitude to it and being like, well, sooner or later it's gonna hit something.
It's just like I don't never tell me the odds. What are the odds? I don't know. 50-50. We hit it or we don't.
I mean, to be fair, the thing about Luna 1, right? Funniest piece of space debris to get hit by.
That's how we're introduced to our first, aliens. Just
first contact. One of them gets killed, like hitting the fucking head or tentacles or whatever by Luna 1. And then the second moment after that is we need to find who did this. And they have a bunch of like propaganda shrapnel medallions to look at. And we get a landing on Earth. It's like, where the fuck is the Soviet Union?
One of the aliens having the propaganda shrapnel like stuck in his forehead like Venom Snake.
Introducing Marxism to an intergalactic species through bombarding them with shrapnel.
Absolute, through like about maximum velocity. Just doing the thing from The World Is Not Enough where he has like one of the Marxism-Leninism medallions moving towards his brain, and as it travels it makes him more communist.
Lives in the middle of the Russian Victory Day parade. I found you all this time.
Space age spying.
Now, there are a lot of reasons why the CIA was particularly interested in space and learning whatever it could about the Soviet space program. First off, neither the Soviets or the Americans really had homegrown rockets. Both sides made extensive use of Nazi rocket know-how, acquired through all kinds of horribly shady means that we will talk about. Operation Paperclip, Operation Osoaviakum, and when recruiting failed, good old kidnapping and blackmail. I'm not going to feel too sorry for them because they're fucking Nazis. I will say that a lot of these people probably should have died at Nuremberg instead of, getting cushy jobs.
Oh, sure. Although at least the Soviet ones were a bit less cushy in that it's like, 5 guys are in your apartment in East Berlin. You are now going to Siberia rather than we are going to like get you a house in like Texas with a pool and a barbecue.
Hey, would you like to go to Siberia or become a wind chime?
I do love that they did the bait and switch because whenever the Soviets were recruiting, their big kind of draw was because they had captured a lot of the V2 facilities in East Germany. Their draw was, hey, you don't have to move. You can stay in Germany. And then they did that for like 1 year. And then they just said like, yeah, sorry, we're going to Baikonur now.
Yeah, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. That's engraved on every single one of the shrapnel things.
They got their asses with the camel spiders in Baikonur.
The fucking Overwatch thing of you're going to Kazakhstan.
So basically, both sides were already really good at stealing and incorporating other designs. So once the space race got started, they just started doing it to each other. Another reason was, back then, there was no such thing as a dedicated spacecraft launch vehicle. Both sides launched their satellites with modified ballistic missiles. For example, the basis of the Soyuz rockets that launched Sputnik 1, Laika, the Luna probes, the first cosmonauts, and are still being used today to launch Russian cosmonauts, it is the R-7 Semyorka, the world's first ICBM. Meanwhile, it wouldn't be until the Saturn V that NASA got a truly dedicated space rocket. They were also using modified nuclear missiles. All of that is to say that if you learned anything about a satellite launch vehicle, you were basically also unlocking your enemy's nuclear secrets. The rockets were like 1-to-1. This also made propaganda really difficult for both sides since they wanted to show off their fancy new toys but couldn't afford to give away how they worked or how well they worked or anything like that. And you had this back and forth of the scientists want to put out scientific papers. They want to talk about all this stuff and show it off. And the military guys are just like, please don't tell anyone about my rocket. Please don't tell anyone.
All they can send is just a rocket under a sheet. Here's our pointy cylinder.
And the end result of this is that a lot of, especially Soviet space propaganda wound up being this perfectly calculated study of, vagueness. It was just vague enough that they could brag about it while not actually giving anything away.
Yeah, what did you just put on the moon? Who's asking? What's it to you? Who wants to know?
Yeah, holding a huge victory parade for this thing you did, and if anyone how'd you do it? This is a huge achievement. What? No, fuck off.
Yeah. The Lenin Prize for year 1962 has been awarded to Comrade Johnny Tightlips.
Oh yeah, and that actually that kind of did happen. Because whenever Sputnik launched, they wanted to give a Nobel Prize to the person responsible, and the person most responsible was Sergei Korolev, the head of OKB-1. But because his identity was a secret, the Soviets responded no, this is an achievement of the entire Soviet Union. On the one hand, that is kind of fair. I don't like the I don't like the idea of boiling down any big space program to just one guy, great man of history kind of stuff. But
no, it's great, but it's also very clearly we're not doxing our boy.
Just Korolev in his oddly shiny leather jacket, just pissed off in his house.
And of course, Call of Duty Black Ops hadn't been invented yet, so they had no way of explaining to him that if they had revealed his identity, the Americans would have killed him with some anachronistic SMGs.
Woods, you see that fat guy over there? Yeah, the fat guy in the leather jacket, the one who's always eating. That guy, get him.
The fucking MP5K on slide 10 has been bothering me since I saw it.
I know, right?
Now, whenever it came to space secrecy, the Americans had a much harder time of it. NASA was a public institution that was under constant media and political scrutiny, and every launch was announced well in advance. While the military could classify what exactly was being launched, it was still pretty easy to figure it out from the rocket used and what orbit it wound up in.
Yeah, very, very fun to do this with the space shuttle program, for instance, where it's it's STS fucking, whatever. What's this one doing? Don't worry about it. Who's on it? Don't worry about it. Why is it doing this weird orbit? Don't worry about it.
Just as soon as you see NRO, it glances off the mind. Just, oh, no, I'm
done.
Yeah.
But then the problem is that you have a bunch of amateur astronomers with really fancy telescopes who can look up and see them manhandling the keyhole satellite out of the fucking payload bay or whatever.
I can't wait to talk about the KH project.
Oh, hold that thought, buddy. We're gonna get to that very soon.
Me talking to the Op-4 rocket. Hey, what you got there, bud? And it's just oh, nothing. Rocket with a suspicious probe-shaped lump in its throat.
Now, the Soviets did not have that problem. They only announced launches after the fact, and only if they were a success. If a rocket didn't reach orbit, it never existed. But if a payload did reach orbit and then it failed, say if a Luna probe was launched but then it didn't reach the moon, they had something called the Kosmos system to help cover it up. So we've talked about this briefly in our episode on Kosmos 954, but for our guest and any new listeners, a Kosmos number is a generic satellite designator that gets slapped on any Soviet or Russian satellite that doesn't have an official project name. So like Sputnik 3, Luna 15, Venera 12. It is basically miscellaneous satellite number.
Don't worry about it.
Do not worry about this object. It doesn't exist.
Why are you so, just a kind of gaslight designation, why are you so worried about this object? You're always talking about the object. I feel like you're kind of obsessed with the object. You don't think about my feelings. And really, I think it's kind of strange, you know, because you're always putting objects up there, but you always want to look at my objects.
God, now I'm just thinking about how Sputnik 3 was officially called Object D.
I was about to talk about Object D.
Our favorite boy.
Listen, maybe there's questions about the object, but I really find your tone when you're asking about the object kind of hostile, and I don't think that like I'm in a place mentally to engage with that kind of negativity right now. We sent the Soviet Union to therapy.
And to give you an idea of how much they use this, at time of writing, the latest Kosmos satellite that was launched about a month ago is Kosmos 2576, a Russian geodetic surveyor.
2,500 instances of, don't worry about it.
Yeah, no.
So maybe you should look at your own fucking objects.
In practice, like the Cosmos system, it's an amazing way of hiding military satellites because it like confusing Western observers about their purpose. But the other thing that it did is that it was great for covering up failures. So the military stuff is simple. You just give it a generic name and no one can figure out exactly what it's doing, or they can make best guesses about like, well, it's in this orbit and it's this size. But the failure stuff is much more interesting. By only announcing missions once they were successful and being flexible with naming, the Soviets were able to give the impression like they were able to put up flawless numbers. Because Luna 1 was a success, Luna 2 was a success, don't worry about the 5 launches in between.
The Soviet Rorsat satellites, right? The ones that, you know, just when they were done, they had the radioactive...
Slammed into Canada, yeah.
Yeah, the radioactive Bukkake. Does it get a new Cosmos number? Because now you have 2 objects.
No, they don't, unfortunately. As much fun as it would be to track every little bit of radioactive coolant that those things spewed into orbit.
I wish my object could spew radioactive confetti.
When Luna 3 hits that alien, it becomes like Cosmos 26,000 through 28,000 as every part, like...
fucking those kids in the Chernobyl show running onto the roof, shoveling graphite into a rocket and launching it at Alpha Centauri. Just putting zinc coffins into a fairing and concreting them in, just like.
Now that's the true introduction to an alien civilization.
Just open the fairing, lying completely dead inside. It's still insanely radioactive in there. It's like locked in rigor mortis with 2 thumbs up and your entire face melted off. Just like and also extremely radioactive Pioneer plaque attached to you. Just like yeah, we're from here. It fucking sucks actually.
The aliens assuming that every single human looks like the melting guy in Indiana Jones. Oh fuck.
This is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum from my actual opinion about the Pioneer plaque and stuff like the Voyager Golden Record, which is that they should have depicted humans like 20 feet tall, standing on a throne made of alien skulls, and just featured the words, our entire planet is an ERA brick. If you fuck with us, we will kill ourselves and you. I have what you might call a sort of tactical response to the Dark Forest hypothesis. Arriving at first contact with a bunch of South Korean Navy SEALs.
Yeah, like hand outstretched to shake in one hand, a detonator in the other, just twitching. So for the Cosmos numbers, the way this worked for failures was basically that, like, if you launch a rocket into orbit and you call it Moonlander 4, and then your opponents notice that Moonlander 4 is still in low Earth orbit and it's spinning out of control, that's embarrassing. But if Cosmos 24601 is spinning out of control in low Earth orbit, it's supposed to do that. Fuck you. Prove me wrong.
Cosmos Javert is coming up after it, though.
In practice, it's just, if you give it a Cosmos number, you can excuse anything it's doing by just pretending it's supposed to do that.
Yeah, we actually love it when this one spins around uncontrollably in low Earth orbit.
The breakdancing satellite.
We set it up there as a, how you say, social experiment.
We have launched this one as a, how you say, joke.
It's a prank.
Inspired by work of your YouTuber, Mr. Beast.
Now, despite all of the difficulties, the Soviet system for secrecy, propaganda, and cover-ups, it actually worked really well. This frustrated the CIA to no end, and they poured their resources into trying to figure out how the Soviet rocket program worked. In fact, the second ever U-2 spy plane flight over Soviet airspace was to take pictures of rocket factories.
This building's doing some suspicious shit.
Better yet, just the idea that the Soviets are building these rockets and then just rolling them out of the hangar into the parking lot and just kind of leaving them there.
just up on cinder blocks.
Yeah. Now, later flights discovered a top-secret Soviet launch site deep in the Kazakh desert, Tyor-Tam, or Baikonur Cosmodrome, because back then they just didn't know where it was. The Soviets were launching satellites, and no one knew where they were doing it from. And then, when the Soviets made new air defenses that could shoot down the U-2s, the CIA pivoted to building their own satellites. Now, you never have to give it to the CIA or really any Cold War intelligence agency, but for the sake of history, they really were the first people to realize that satellites could be used for intelligence gathering and military purposes. Up to then, it had pretty much just been propaganda and science.
Oh, the early keyhole satellites were so cool.
Oh, the film return.
Yes!
I mean, I think I have a hard time getting film developed. Jesus Christ.
But no, just the mid-air recovery was so fucking cool.
Yeah, we're just gonna like fire this down from orbit with like a bunch of 35mm film in it, and we're gonna like snatch it out of mid-air.
Plucked with the might of Zeus.
So you are predicting this perfectly because these are the world's first spy satellites. They're codenamed Corona, and they are launched starting in 1959. And I need people to understand how much resources the CIA poured into this. Of the 24 satellites launched by anyone in 1959, a third of them were CIA spy satellites. Of the first 60 satellites launched in human history, 10 of them were CIA spy satellites.
Incredible.
Like, this is the biggest satellite series of its era because they are mass manufacturing these things. They are launching them. NASA and all of these other American space agencies are having to wait in line because the CIA needs to launch another Discoverer 10.
Doing the another $14 billion for Israel meme, but it's like another 100 satellites for the National Reconnaissance Office.
You don't understand. I need more satellites.
So, after pouring hundreds of millions and a couple of guys' lives, because some of these things exploded, into building a fleet of spy satellites, it was a surprise when the biggest space intelligence coup in history was basically just the Soviets handing it to them. We have finally reached the part where I get to talk about the CIA Luna heist.
Conflicting sources.
So, I have two main sources for this episode, and it's worth talking about how both of them came to be. The main one is an article in the CIA internal journal Studies in Intelligence called The Kidnapping of Lunik. This is basically just like an internal, hey, look at this thing we did, and never meant to be seen by the public. It was written by one of the agents involved in the story and published in 1967. It stayed secret until a FOIA request brought it into the public eye in 2019, which is about when every tech website on the planet made basically the same article about it. For clarity going forward, I'm going to call this the CIA article. The other source is an MIT article called Lunik, Inside the CIA's Audacious Plot to Steal a Soviet Satellite, written in 2021. Let's call it the MIT article. While it does source heavily from the CIA article, it also uses the books written by and interviews done with other spies involved in this story. And this is where we run into some problems. The CIA article is so vague and sanitized that it barely has any details. It's vague. It reads like a CIA puff piece, which it is, and it doesn't even say which hemisphere this story happened in. Meanwhile, the MIT article credulously repeats the conflicting words of spies who got out of the CIA and DFS and immediately started glory hounding like crazy. It does have a bit more detail and it fills in a lot of the blanks. It also has elements that are it has a lot of flourishes that will be really good whenever they make the screenplay. Villains shaking their fist, that kind of stuff.
Sounds like people that were not exactly excited to be spies, but they just wanted to be guys that were spies.
And that's another thing we'll see with this story. These guys they're not used to spy shit. These guys are overthrowers. The instant you ask them to do spy shit, they kind of don't know what to do.
Yeah, I don't have to put LSD in anyone's drink to do this. What the fuck?
This satellite, does it vote? Does it have leftist political leanings?
It's like Chesty Puller's thing about seeing a flamethrower and going, where do you put the bayonet? Like seeing a sort of Soviet space capsule and being like, where do you put the Nazi scientists?
Just attempting, guy gets confused, starts attempting to garrote the satellite.
Yeah, we must arm, train, and fund moderate rebels within the satellite.
Trying to give the satellite LSD and just putting a tab on it.
The satellite yearns for democracy, you know?
The Soviets coming back the next day and just finding like some blotter paper stuck to the side of the rocket. What the fuck is this?
Just breaking a bunch of syringes, trying to inject the satellite with chemicals.
Oh my god.
Now, with all of that in mind, I have tried to like corroborate these two sources as much as possible and sanitize some of the more fantastical elements. If I've left any of them in, it's for entertainment alone, and I will be sure to let you know whenever they come up that they are like, this is kind of doubtful.
Do you have a version that only has the bullshit?
That will be linked. Yeah,
it's usually called, well, there's your problem, so whenever we steal
the version, if I take out all of the real stuff, it literally just reads like a worse James Bond movie.
Is that possible?
Yeah, it's just like the spy writing, like, can you make me more buff? Can you
The problem is he can't fuck the satellite.
Yeah, the satellite is a love interest.
Can you make my object bigger?
My object D.
Can we embellish the dimensions of the object that we launched?
For what it's worth, the MIT article, when describing the agents involved, almost every single one of them, it starts by describing how hot they are and like handsome. And
maybe the CIA was just more fuckable back in the day. I don't know. Like,
before they became dry and uninteresting and a bunch of Mormons.
You put, like, ever since, like, the war on terror really fucked the CIA over in that they all got into khakis and, like, 5'11 and shit.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
You lost a lot of the, like, sort of Alan Dulles hair cream kind of situation, which, you know.
At the end of the day, though, this is not something our audience should be unfamiliar with. It's basically every Soviet space agency story we've covered where, like, the official sources are censored, they're vague, and they're bland. So as soon as perestroika happens, a bunch of glory hounds all write memoirs full of lies, insisting that every problem was everyone else's fault.
The Luna Heist.
So, let me set the scene. October 1959. Place, the world. The Soviets have just launched Luna 3 and published the world's first view of the far side of the moon. Khrushchev is performing an end zone dance on the world stage. The Soviets are printing propaganda posters like no tomorrow.
I really like this one where you have Luna 3 as a kind of, like, extremely high velocity photographic trash can.
Yeah.
Like,
also, a fun side note about Luna 3, since we're talking about spy shit, the film that took the first pictures of the far side of the moon actually came from the CIA.
Khrushchev again, right? Like, complex historical figure, but also, like, up there with LBJ in terms of, like, dick
Big
length,
dick energy,
figuratively.
yeah.
The metaphorical
Object D size.
So basically what happened was, if you're going to send a probe out to the moon, there's a lot of radiation. If you're going to take pictures, you need radiation-resistant film, which the Soviets did not have. However, the CIA did have radiation-resistant film, and they were sending it to the Soviets every now and then because they were flying hundreds of spy balloons, and every now and then these would crash, and the Soviets would harvest the film.
Incredible.
For what it's worth, Khrushchev didn't know. None of the higher-ups knew. They thought it was a Soviet invention. It's just that the guy in charge of the camera was like, fuck, we can't do this. And he had a friend of a friend of a friend who had some of this film, and he was just like,
I told Alan Dulles it sounded like he was just feeding radiation-resistant film to the Soviet Union, and he got mad at me.
The film they had, it was the wrong size. It didn't fit in the camera, so Soviet scientists had to, with scissors by hand, cut the film, like trim it down to size to be able to fit.
Incredible.
And this is the first pictures of the far side of the moon. The Kremlin only found out once perestroika happened.
Just look at the OKBs, you did fucking what?
I'm trapped on the thought about the film theft, because it's like, you say that it wasn't a Soviet invention, but why did they fly those balloons over the Romanian SSR?
Well, actually, though, the reason why the guy in Baikonur was able to get it is because they were flying them over Baikonur.
I was just right. You just landed on the guy's fucking office by accident.
Yeah. Just like, God damn it, this film isn't working. I truly wish upon a star that I had some radiation resistant film, and then just like plowing through the sky.
Big like CIA printed on the side of the balloon.
The CIA orb just crashes through your gas.
He's wishing on a shooting star, but it's actually a flaming hydrogen balloon. So yeah, that is how the CIA made a huge Soviet and landmark scientific victory happen.
Thank you again to the CIA. This is the thing, right? Joe Biden is so lacking in imagination. We could be doing this shit with Chinese spy balloons now, and we're choosing not to, you know?
God, my favorite thing from
it's a digital camera, but I'm sure you could take that camera and launch it into space.
I'd fucking, take the SD card out of it. I don't give a fuck.
Well, just tape a Huawei phone to a spy satellite.
Yeah. just like an American spy balloon, which is like a weather balloon with a Huawei phone on a really long string. It's like coming in over the Chinese coast at like 40 feet above.
But the balloon is still in like the upper atmosphere. The string is just that strong, long.
So the Soviets have just succeeded in launching Luna 3. They have taken this picture. This is a huge propaganda and scientific victory. And in light of their massive win, the Soviets decide to take their space program on tour. They set up a sort of traveling world fair where a Soviet pavilion would go from city to city and show off all of the industrial and scientific progress of the USSR.
I've seen some of the legacy of this in Moscow. This sort of like cosmological park thing, complete with a lot of statues, of course. So it's cool. Like, probably cooler still back in the day when you could be like, holy shit, you guys are still putting them up there, you know?
In 1958, space was a very big part of that. You can see a Sputnik model in the back.
I don't like seeing Soviet propaganda in Dutch. That leaves an uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, no, something about that is not tickling my brain in a good way.
Oh, I need to see We hebben een serious probleem in Cyrillic.
Houston, we hebben een serious problem.
Wait a second, how can we be sure this is the Netherlands? I'm not seeing anyone wearing blackface.
Well, a lot of them are walking towards the Sputnik.
Oh shit, you're right.
So they're doing this expo, they're traveling around, and the main attraction was a third stage of a Luna rocket, complete with a probe similar to Luna 1 and 2. So they started off traveling through Europe, then North America. Whenever it reached New York, CIA agents were somehow able to get access to the rocket for a few hours alone, presumably they came in at night, and they were shocked to find out that this thing was not a model. It was not a mock-up. It was a real rocket and a real probe, and all they had done is just strip a couple of the electronics out.
And making a model is expensive. What do you want? Then we have to show it to the model guys. Could compromise secrecy.
The Americans surely won't see it and steal it. Wait a second.
Everything else was real, even the manufacturer's marks on every part. So after years of doing incredibly successful OPSEC, the Soviets have just decided to send their probe on vacation with a couple of guards.
Just the museum is a sacred space, you know?
Sending the probe on vacation makes it sound like the satellite has some agency.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel bad now because they got to go on vacation and then a CIA guy comes up and slaps a blot of paper. Leaving my space probe in the apartment on holiday while I go and have tapas across the street.
Not bringing the satellite to the restaurant.
Just the Soviet Union getting really into that kind of spurious TikTok kidnapping hysteria thing and being if you see someone has left a zip tie around your space probe, it means they're about to fucking kidnap you.
There's just one of those Apple sensors pinned to the side of it when they come back.
Put an air tag on the They're gang stalking my fucking probe, dude. It's over.
Now, for political reasons, the CIA didn't dare to try anything on US soil. That would be a diplomatic incident. But the next stop on the tour was a place where the CIA loved doing fucked up shit. Latin America. Specifically Mexico.
Oh, God.
And while the CIA had and has no problem getting their hands dirty themselves, they also like working with local proxies. So
it's a sort of guest starring thing, you know? Yeah. Local talent, very important to help bring that up.
So throughout the Cold War, many American-aligned countries founded intelligence agencies in the mold of the CIA. So the most obvious of these is the South Korean KCIA, and in Mexico, this was something called the DFS, the Federal Security Directorate. These guys are the bad guys in Narcos Mexico.
Yeah. It really fell out with the federal government of the US with the whole Camarena thing. But like, cool furry flag though. It's like this is like representation or whatever, you know.
The
Like,
fucking DFS mascot running out in the tiger suit and just like shooting a gorilla in the back of the head.
Kiki Camarena getting fucking tortured to death in a basement by a bunch of guys wearing like thigh highs.
And while all of these intel agencies could generally be trusted to act like the CIA, so like paranoid anti-communism and suppressing anyone left of Nixon, they also had some unique local flavor. For the DFS, this meant being wildly corrupt. As long as you occasionally disappeared some leftists, having a DFS badge was basically a license to extort, murder, and sell your services to whichever narco was paying.
It's probably like the most fun you could have if being like insanely evil didn't bother you in like 20th century history, is being like one of these kind of like CIA client agents, you know?
I mean, every once in a while you have to sneeze around through a leftist skull and then you can just
God damn it.
be the most entertained man in Mexico.
Why do I have to do it? Get the new guy to do it. He loves shooting people. Just being like the new guy at the DFS and every single person above you hands you all of the leftist executions. So you're just shooting like 12,000 people a day.
Just on a moped running around Mexico City.
And like basically the CIA also did stuff like this, but it tended to be in the vein of like, we're gonna sell our services to the narcos and we're gonna use this money and we're gonna put it in a dark slush fund and we're gonna use that to do some like Iran-Contra shit. Whereas the DFS was just straight up corruption. It's just you do stuff for the narcos and you take the money home. And this got to the point where several high up DFS officials just flat out became their own narco lords.
I love the term dark slush fund.
Like I wanted to go with dark money and then slush fund as well. So dark slush fund just kind of came into being.
Getting a dark slushy from the sinister slushy machine.
For any people who heard us on Lions Led by Donkeys, it's got the consistency of mazout, that like that tar oil.
Oh, God. Paying
people out in black slurry gold.
Just here's a Ziploc bag of mazout. That's your payment for the week.
like sort of like a gardening like bag of mulch, but full of mazout. You know, slamming that into the bed of your pickup truck.
We got to disappear this guy. Make him sleep with the mazout. Getting concrete slowly sinking into the mazout pool. Anyway, the CIA resolved to steal the Luna satellite. Also, the stories disagree about whether it was a Luna 2 or a Luna 3. And the MIT article repeatedly calls it Luna 3, and then it shows pictures of Luna 2. I found the work of a couple of space historians that seem to agree that it is Luna 2. So, like, one of the probes that just slammed into the moon with the propaganda bombs.
Wait, so you're telling me that the CIA potentially still has a couple of extremely sensitive, like, propaganda footballs?
Well, I mean, they put them back. I would have grabbed a piece, but
I'm just trying to envision, really picture the propaganda football in my head, and I'm just thinking that, like, what if it's like too hard? Because it's meant to hit the moon, right? What if you're trying to break it and it's like a kind of Easter egg / Terry's chocolate orange
you
situation?
Have to slam it on
you're
the
like
table.
Banging this shit off. Yeah, exactly. Like on the edge of a table, and it's just like, for fuck's sake.
And something I thought whenever I was researching this was like, all right, fuck the CIA, but at least this is going to be actual spycraft, taking pictures of top secret rockets. No one's getting disappeared or having their government overthrown. But because this is the CIA in Latin America in the 50s, the only agents available were all leftist disappearers who treated this like a sort of, they treated this spy job as a fun distraction from their normal work.
having to like take it to those guys, and they're like, okay, so where do you want me to kidnap the leftist space probe? Just bundling the leftist space probe into the back of a Ford Falcon.
Having to rewrite the mission dossier to like make them understand it.
Yeah, so picture this as an extremely large, like several 100-ton college student.
So we need you to disassemble it and take pictures of the parts. And like, some guy in the back raises his hand, torture it and cut it apart brutally. Hand goes down.
Just bone saw it.
Putting out a cigarette in the fucking space.
Hold that thought.
Oh my God. just like balance really precariously in a chair it's handcuffed to. They're like shining lights.
So, for example, CIA agent Robert Zambernardi.
I thought you were going to say Zamboni for a second. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
God.
Robert Zamboni, inventor of the Zamboni.
the world is so small, you know, like.
The Zamboni was originally invented as a torture device where they run you over with it. It was later discovered to be pretty useful for ice hockey.
Extremely successful at infiltrating Canadian society.
So this guy, Robert Zambernardi, he ran a team of local mercenaries he recruited from the corrupt federal judicial police, who he used to...
Jesus Christ, it's like a Warren Zevon song, man. You could just do anything.
And he used them to disappear American citizens into Mexican prisons. If you are an American in Mexico and you are an undesirable, you're just going to go to prison for something and never get out.
Cool. Okay.
And yeah, the record keeping's probably not great, so who knows where you went. Meanwhile, Winston Scott's cover story was that he was the first secretary of the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. His real job was wiretapping the Soviet embassy, sicking the DFS on Mexican opposition parties, and running the president of Mexico as a personal informant.
Again, you could just do anything.
Yeah. For their part, the DFS contributed agent Eduardo Diaz Silvetti, a counter-espionage veteran who worked to remove so-called, or the way he describes it, communist spies from Mexico City. So this is kind of like a dream team of the available agents in Mexico City at the time, and literally none of these guys have real, like, spycraft experience. These guys are at best counter-espionage, and at worst they are just, like, shooting people in the back of the head and disappearing them into prisons.
So this is basically just the Meal Team 6 of spy stuff.
Yeah.
I still have the mental image of them trying to bundle the entire satellite into the trunk of a Ford Falcon.
The black bag doesn't fit. They're just like trying to yank it over the
top. Yeah, they're like opening Gambit coming up behind the probe and hitting it over the back really hard for the gosh.
Detonating the shrapnel bomb and killing everyone with propaganda.
just everyone on the block watching four guys with blackjacks working over a satellite going, why won't it get down?
Hey, he's ready to talk.
I'm so sorry, I shoot propaganda shrapnel when I get scared.
Boss, it's no use. This guy's not gonna crack. Rolling up your sleeves, wiping your brow, like, boss, we've been at this for 4 hours. He's not talking.
The fifth guy just comes in with a Millwall brick. All right, let me have a go.
So with this team gathered, they started observing the Soviet movements. On November 19th, they watched a Soviet cargo ship arrive at the port of Tampico. Quote from the MIT article. The freight cars were slowly loaded with objects from Russian life, everything from hammer and sickle postage stamps to fur coats and instruments that displayed the might of Soviet science. Cutting-edge microscopes that revealed the invisible and world-beating telescopes that scanned the great beyond. Under the unflinching stares of armed KGB agents, workers lifted the Luna onto the train. I'm never not going to fuck that up.
That. They'll know if you cut it.
I'm going to keep it in. Yeah, fine.
under the stairs of the hosts of Kill James Bond.
They had a real like modern Belarus moment, and they really wanted to show off tractors at these expos.
Yes.
I'm in Mexico City in 1960, having a fantastic time seeing the Kirovets K700. Lee Harvey Oswald is pushing past me on his way into the Soviet embassy for some reason. It's all going really well. I'm just thinking, I'm trying to envision KGB agent in Mexico in the 60s as a fit, and it's not giving me any bad options.
We'll get some artists on it.
Really, really short AK and like white pants, I think, is the move there.
Now, their first plan was to steal the rocket while it was still on the train. How that would have worked, I have zero idea.
I mean, you're never going to turn down a chance to do a train heist, are you?
Steal the whole train. I mean, where are you going to take it, you know?
Bundle the train into the back of a car.
Like, they're just sitting there watching it, just like, this sucks. Bringing along a leftist student to execute as, like, a way of keeping yourself entertained.
But, like, as a snack?
Yeah.
To go down something of that vein now, it's like how like when the search and rescue dogs get depressed not finding anyone, so they have to put like an actor for them to find or something, right? Like these guys like getting depressed, oh, our mission's not going too good. The counter espionage is too strong, and so they have to like bring out their like leftist college student to execute just to keep morale up.
Now, unfortunately, the Great Mexican Train Heist never happened. The train successfully made it to Mexico City, and the whole exhibition was apparently a huge success. Tourists poured in to look at Soviet cars, models of nuclear power plants, and fancy new TVs. everything necessary to demonstrate, as the Soviets put it, the boundless creative abilities of socialism. Now, while this was going on, the CIA were back at the drawing board planning the heist. Their new idea was to grab the satellite after the exhibition while it was being trucked back to the train station. So far, so simple. While Silvetti and the DFS studied street maps for the best place to hijack the truck, the CIA handled everything they'd need to actually analyze the spacecraft. 5 American rocket scientists were sent on emergency, mandatory vacations to Mexico. They were not told what was going on or where they were going, or that they could soon be involved in an international incident. As soon as they arrived, they were put in 5 different hotels for a couple of days and just told to just wait, we'll come get you.
You just chill.
This would be the scariest thing ever. Like, if I was some guy working at NASA, your boss comes over just like, hey, we approved your vacation. What vacation?
Get in the Ford Falcon.
Go to Mexico. Yeah.
Now, as much as I hate these guys, the heist itself was pretty professional. I'll probably walk that back in a bit, but the first part was pretty professional. The first step was making sure the satellite left the exhibition last and not part of the main truck convoy. Silvetti managed this by sabotaging the truck. By the time the Soviets got it working, it drove out of the exhibition right into Mexico City's infamous rush hour.
I do kind of need to see the movie of this, is the thing.
So it did have an escort of Soviet soldiers, but they lost those guys because there was another delay where the CIA, they faked a construction problem on some train tracks to slow them down. They had a plan for getting rid of the escort. They had a plan for that. They didn't need it because it was at this point that the truck full of KGB agents sworn to guard this fucking satellite with their life got bored and left.
just it's too fucking hot.
Like a guy walked over to the driver and was just like, you know where you're going, just go to the train station. They went to a celebration party.
Going to fucking Taqueria Goku. Dudes rock. I thought I was going to have to retract some of my praise of the imagined, KGB agent in Mexico City. Seemingly not. These dudes are out here living their best life, you know? They're I at some point, I'm going to have to go back to the Soviet fucking Union. I am going to get tacos. This is non-negotiable, right? There's only so many pierogi you can eat in your life, and at some point, if you're offered, birria is put before you, you're gonna well, the KGB guys and birria different thing, but you're gonna eat the fucking food, right?
The way this is described, they're supposed to leave at 4 o'clock. They get delayed to 5:30.
How do you tell when there's a KGB guy at the taco stand because he always orders the birria? Thank you.
And these guys are just sitting at the truck. They know the restaurant closes at 5:30. It's 5:29. He's watching his watch, and the line of trucks is not moving. Just,
all right, they're gonna spend the rest of their life trying to recreate the birria taco, but in pierogi form.
Yeah, but they go back to having the potato ravioli at home. So
all of these guys got sentenced after this to go and be regolith collectors. So I'm not sure it worked out for them, but in that moment, there is no word of criticism that I can offer to them.
I'm very disappointed that there was not the escorts were not disposed of by laxative means. I was expecting that, and that didn't happen. They just left. So
they were ready to give them all the Havana syndrome, or just one giant sort of tarp-sized thing of LSD that they were just going to throw over the whole truck.
But this is the 1950s, so the Havana syndrome gun, the CIA heart attack gun, is the size of 2 Mack trucks. And they just couldn't fly it down in time.
It needs 4 diesel generators.
Yeah, we're gonna give this guy wheel it in, and you just hear the beeping of a truck backing up.
Hold still, sir. You're being assassinated.
Now, for what it's worth, the MIT article, and I could not confirm this doesn't appear in the CIA article or any of the other ones. Silvetti claims that they roofied every one of these guards because after they left it alone, they wanted to make sure they stayed at the party. So that's where LSD comes in.
Oh, okay.
Again, this is the part, audience, I highly doubt this. This is something that is coming from a glory hound and spy. But the way he describes it is that they used tranquilizers and prostitutes. So they made these guys really horny and they tranquilized them, and apparently just
those guys had a fantastic evening, just all told. They're the real heroes in this.
Part of me is kind of like, why use both? If you're going to tranquilize them, if you're going to knock them out, why send hookers?
Well, the hookers have to supervise them to make sure.
What are those women going to do? Yeah,
up.
they're just sitting there with a bunch of like passed out Soviet KGB guys, just like, all right, fuck, I guess. Being hired to seduce a guy, he passes out immediately, and you have to put him in the recovery position. All of this happening, the KGB guys just immediately fucking off and leaving the satellite alone, kind of like skipped 5 steps in the CIA plan. And about a minute after the KGB guys left, they just hijacked the truck. They just walked up, like pulled the driver out and just drove away with it.
Just walk up, press triangle.
This is the most excited they've been all mission. They finally get to kill someone.
No, they didn't. They like the way this is, and the truck driver is basically just like, all right, fuck it. I don't have loyalty to anyone right now. I am driving a truck.
I'm more of a kind of a truck Ronin in a lot of ways.
These agents are the most cucked people in the CIA, it sounds like.
They walk up, they ask the driver, like, hey, we're going to take this. And the other agents have already, like, they have their guns out. They already have the tarp laid out on the ground. The main agent turns, he shakes his head at them. Oh, dang.
And the Tyvek suit just so sad the entire time.
Just shuffling around in my overshoes, making a really papery noise, just like, oh.
So with basically zero effort, they have managed to hijack what is at the time one of the most advanced spacecraft in existence. So they drive it to a lumberyard, and this lumberyard is owned by Silvetti's brother-in-law, and he has basically convinced him, like, hey, send your guys on vacation. I'm going to host some friends, and we're going to have a little party. And this is going to be the examination site for the Luna. So first problem of the heist, they couldn't fit the truck through the gate, so they just smashed it through the sidewall.
Hell yeah, let's go.
The National Clandestine Service.
Just backing through the wall with a little siren on.
They have a satellite in the back. They have an incredibly fragile piece of hardware that, like, if it gets the tiniest bit damaged, the Soviets will know, and they're just, like, ramming it into a wall. Also, remember this, it will come back later. So, safely tucked away with their prize, the CIA's recruited scientists were able to get their first look at the satellite. Like I said before, these were not mock-ups. It's unclear whether they were backups or, like, engineering test units, but the gist is that they were, like, they had all of the secrets in them. The Soviets had done less than the bare minimum of spy-proofing. They had only drained the fuel. They had removed part of the engine and like a little bit of the electronics.
Amazing. And
while I've gone back and forth between calling this a professional heist and a shit show, the actual examining the satellite part of the story just sounds like work hell. First off, the godless communist rocket is all in metric, and they didn't have metric tools, so they had to go and rush and get some more.
It's like buying like wrenches in the middle of the night, you know?
Imagine if that was like the thing that gave them away. Like, I don't want to get too far ahead because I don't know what's going to happen.
All of the screws are stripped.
It's like the obviousness of like a guy who murdered someone and then they go and like review his Google search history and there's suspicious searches about how to dispose of a body or whatever. Like,
well, they just do the like string thing and they just leave a screwdriver in there, like sticking out of it with a big like Hecho en Mexico thing on it, you know?
So that's the first problem. Second, the bottom plate of this rocket, so it is held on by 130 bolts that all have to be removed.
Yes. Just as many bolts as possible. Make it difficult.
It's like you're going to need to go out and get a second wrench.
And third, and this is kind of a real problem, the way into the electronics component, like there's an electronics box inside the engine block. It is covered with a plastic seal, something they can't just glue back into place. If they remove it and try and put it back, it's going to look weird. So what they do is they remove the seal, they drive it off to the US Embassy as fast as possible, and they just pray that someone there in the Arts and Crafts division can make a decent copy.
I mean, incredible forging work, potentially.
The CIA Arts and Crafts Department.
But better yet, this is happening at like 2 a.m., so they have to have the Arts and Crafts guy, like, you are the on-call CIA Arts and Crafts guy in the Mexico field office. Like, this is the most exciting thing that has happened in your life.
You're just normally doing, like, short notice passports and stuff. A guy brings you a giant, like, plastic seal off a spacecraft and is like, yeah, fix it. Fix it. Please. I beg you.
This actually sounds cool because it has an embossed Soviet symbol on it.
Ah, sick.
So this guy is going to have fun making this copy. So both articles also describe a couple of scares along the way. Soon after arriving, all the streetlights turned on at once. There's panic, everyone's grabbing at their guns, they think they're being ambushed by the KGB. Until Silvetti told them that this was just like, no, it's 7 o'clock, this always happens.
Shooting streetlights out of habit.
Later on, in the morning, all of the street lights go out at once, plunging everything into darkness. There's panic. Everyone's grabbing at their guns. They think they're being ambushed by the KGB until Silvetti's just like, no, it's 6 a.m. This is when the lights turn off.
CIA officers just fucked literally by the like kind of linear passage of time.
Otherwise, things went pretty smoothly. Quote from the MIT article. By 3 o'clock, the Americans had gutted the Soviet spacecraft. Everything that was removable from the craft was removed, Silvetti told the Austin American Statesman newspaper in 1987. Parts of motors, interior components, scrapings from the rocket fins, liquids that they thought might have been leftover fuel, anything and everything that was of any consequence was stripped and taken. And I really, really, really hope that they did not find fuel in that stage, because this rocket, the Block E, it used our favorite fuel, unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine. This stuff will melt you, light you on fire, give you cancer.
Just a guy soaking it up with like a sponge.
Just gently pipetting it out.
So, working through the night, the CIA agents took almost 300 photographs. As they worked to close up the spacecraft, a car pulled up and passed them a perfect replica of the rocket seal they'd broken earlier.
Sick.
Yeah, the arts and crafts guy.
The coolest moment in the arts and crafts guy's career.
So they fully rebuilt the satellite, put the seal in place, and tightened all 130 bolts. After a final once-over for cigarette butts, because this was the 1950s and all of these guys were smoking inside of the spacecraft as they worked, it was time to escape.
I mean, also kind of like, given that it's the 50s, it's like you get out of the thing, you do your cigarette butt audit, and you're like, yeah, there's nowhere near enough in there. You're gonna throw some Bellamore canals in there.
Because this was like also made in the 50s, I guarantee you they found cigarette butts in there when they first went in, because the Soviet guys are also smoking nonstop.
You just kind of open it up back in the Soviet Union, like, this has clearly been spied on. Nobody here smokes Marlboros.
One guy out back is just double-handing just Russian cigarettes, just wolfing them down.
It's like 5:55 a.m. They have to be done by 6, and they're like, oh god, dude, we're missing like 200 cigarette butts. Get at it. So now it is time to escape and get this thing back to the train station before the Soviet guards show up in the morning.
I'm infatuated with the idea that the device was not functional, like something about it wasn't working. And
they just fix it?
They fixed it inadvertently, having been stolen. Like, imagine just like your opposition steals your thing to figure out how it works, and they when reassembling it, they just make it work correctly by mistake.
Yeah, have you tried turning it off and having the CIA turn it back on?
That would be the best way to fix a problem, though, is just like, oh, this rocket isn't working. All right, here's what we do. We ship it to Mexico. We leave it on a trailer in the middle of nowhere for one night. It will be working whenever we pick it back up.
you forget your like phone password, so you start organizing a leftist insurgency in Central America.
So yeah, now is escape time. Final problem. Not one of these guys knows how to drive a truck with a trailer, let alone how to back it out of the lumberyard.
Jesus Christ.
The satellite has not left the trailer at any point in this. Like, they have basically opened up the crate, they have climbed into the crate, and they've done their work there. So they drove through one direction, and they smashed a hole in the wall. So now to get out, they're just going to continue driving in the same direction and smash through the other wall.
Again, the national clandestine service.
Like, with all this slapstick shit, I'm half expecting to hear that they just nailed the scientist into the box and shipped him back to the Soviet Union.
I'm waiting for the part that you're going to explain to us that they kill-dozer the truck and the lumber building collapses on top of it because they knocked out enough of the support.
So that doesn't happen, but I am just imagining, like, Silvetti's brother-in-law, the guy who, like, Silvetti comes to him and he's like, hey, can we use your place? Me and some buddies are just gonna have a party. You come back the next day, the walls are smashed, there's like rocket fuel on the floor, and the KGB wants you dead.
What kind of party did you guys have?
It's not a real party until the UDMH comes out.
Doing weird orange shots.
just like, yeah, you know what has to happen. He was the first one to fall asleep at the sleepover, and it's a video of a guy just getting melted by fucking hydrazine.
So they get it out, they put the original kidnapped driver in the truck and send him on his way.
That guy's just been in like a back room, hearing them drive the truck in through a wall.
Yeah.
Try to open the thing, swear a lot, come back with new wrenches, open the thing, swear a lot more, ask a guy for a plastic seal, disassemble the thing, reassemble the thing, smoke 200 Soviet cigarettes.
No, they had the driver smoke them all.
All together in a bundle, like the sort of TF2 spy meme. Throw them all in the back, bolt the whole thing closed again, and then drive through another wall. And then they've got him out of the thing, and they're like, "Can you drive the truck, please?"
And I guarantee, like, this guy's a truck driver. He could have backed it in. He could have, like, he knows how to drive with a trailer. And he has just been, like, I don't know, locked in the bathroom this whole time.
Just kind of like popping the trunk of the Ford Falcon, and you're just like, oh man, we should have done this before we drove through the wall. There's a real, like, order of operations thing here.
At the same time, like we're going to see in a second, this guy truly is like the truck driver Ronin, because he has no loyalty. He joins them.
Yes!
Quote, at 7 o'clock, the gates rattled open. Soviet soldiers barraged the driver with questions, and he fed them the story he'd been coached to give. He'd arrived shortly after the station closed, just after the soldiers decamped to their hotel to celebrate, and spent the night dutifully waiting with the cargo. From their car, Silvetti and Dean watched as the Soviets waved the truck into the station unchecked. So this guy, like, they have basically just told him, can you lie to the KGB for us about, like, how you helped us steal a satellite? And dude's just like, yeah, fine, cool.
As a truck Ronin, he has no loyalty to any country or nation.
They gave him precisely 3 cigarettes and a martini. Here you go. Welcome to the company.
So with that, the documents were sent off to the US, the Luna stage was sent off to Havana for the next stop in its rip-roaring international tour, and the CIA Luna heist was complete.
Legacy.
Now, there's conflicting info on how much the CIA actually learned about Soviet rocketry from this heist. Because of what had been published by the Soviets in scientific papers, the West already knew a fair bit about the satellites, and, there weren't any big surprises there. The Soviets, they published data, and whenever the CIA cracked open the satellite, they found the sensors that gave that data.
Likely place for them to be.
The main focus was always the rocket stage, the Block E that carried the satellite. As space historian John McDowell put it,
we didn't know exactly what fuel they were using. We didn't even know the type of rocket. It wasn't so much the spacecraft itself, it was the rocket the CIA was interested in.
Basically, like we talked about earlier, all of these rockets are designed off of the R-7, a nuclear missile. So they figure if they can learn about these satellite rockets, they can then kind of line that back up with the nuclear missiles and know how well the Soviets are doing, what the capability of the Soviets is to lob nuclear warheads. But that is also kind of wrong, because on the flip side, if the CIA wanted to learn about Soviet nuclear missiles like the R-7, then looking at the rocket at the exhibition was a complete waste of time. So this top stage, this third stage, the Block E, it was bolted on top of the R-7. It was never part of any nuclear missile.
So they just did this for no reason.
For shits and giggles.
There's still the possibility that they learned some stuff, but the justification that it was there was nothing they looked at that even remotely lined up with a nuclear missile.
I mean, now the Soviets sort of casual OPSEC makes a lot more sense, I guess. To just be like, fuck it, we're going to Takeria Goku. Instead of guarding this, because, what are they gonna do? Drive through 2 walls of a lumber yard, undo 120 bolts, perfectly reproduce a plastic seal, replace all 220 bolts, rip down 200 cigarettes, drive through another wall, and learn nothing. Fuck this, I'm getting tacos.
So at the same time, people will also credit this heist as being what burst the missile gap. So this is the idea in the 1950s. It was very much driven by Soviet propaganda that the Soviets were building hundreds of nuclear missiles and they would soon have total supremacy over America. For example, Khrushchev famously said in a speech that his factories would churn these rockets out like sausages.
Inconsistently?
This would be true if the Soviet Union only ever managed to produce 12 sausages and made spent several billion on them.
The 12 legs of Dr. Sausage that kept the Soviet Union intact. Because somehow they're using UDFH to manufacture sausages.
Your mouth will hurt. Everyone's mouth will hurt. No one has the level of spice tolerance that will
So this, the missile gap theory did get busted, but it was not through anything at Mexico City because they were just looking at one rocket. They didn't confirm or deny anything about like the number or the manufacturing. It was actually U-2 flights and Corona spy satellites that showed that the Soviets only ever had like a dozen R-7s and only one operational launch site. Now, what I will give a limited amount of credit to this heist for is that it gave the CIA a glimpse into the evolving system of OKBs and factories that made up the Soviet space program.
There's a bunch of like graffiti on the inside of being like OKB 92117 sucks dick. It's just like, wait a second. This meme made by OKB 2928.
Take your sensitive ass back to OKB1, bitch. This is OKB 586. We clowning this motherfucker. Fuck, I've got to make that meme. So, one of the things they did manage to get out of this was that all of these parts, they still had the manufacturer's marks on them. So, like, everything, it still had, like, stamps, inspections, all of that was on these parts. They were able to get pictures of them. They figured out where these parts were made, and from that, they were able to, like, target spy satellites and say, like, okay, well, we know that there's a factory in this city. Let's put a spy satellite here. So in 1959, the Soviet space program hadn't quite devolved into the constant OKB line brawl of the 70s and 80s, but it was getting there. For example, the Luna probe the CIA inspected was made by OKB-1 in Moscow, while the Block E rocket was made by OKB-586 in Ukraine.
Well, they clowning this motherfucker, yeah.
I'm thinking, I have brain rot occurring. I'm thinking of like a Soviet state that's so paranoid about counterintelligence being spied on, I guess is kind of what I'm trying to say. Like it to the point that it has affected them entirely on like a cultural level. All of their buildings just move. So it's like every time you look at the room, everything's rearranged. The buildings are all in different places, and it's like, oh no, like our rocket launch site, yeah, it's this giant tracked vehicle, and we've moved it somewhere else because we knew that you've took photos of it in Kazakhstan.
Literally, the like raison d'etre of the Shaggahod, yeah.
I am first stage.
Citizen, what do you mean? The lunchroom has always been next to boardroom 2. Now, while I don't have any details, it's also likely that the CIA passed some of this info onto the American space programs, which at this time was NASA, the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy. And that they got maybe some technological boost from seeing how the Soviets built their rockets, or at least an upper stage. And while the CIA didn't get any info on how the rest of the rocket looked, the diameter of the Luna stage confirmed to them that the R7 was massive. Also, you can see if you go to slide... Oh,
Why
people are already there.
So
slide 20.
Yeah,
slide 26.
I like the fucking thick Luna of the thick R7 to be like, yeah, what does this look like? Girthy, I imagine.
What if we just made it wider?
What if we loud and boomered our rocket?
Audience, what we are describing right now is the CIA...
getting really horny about the dimensions of rocket.
Yeah, they made a couple of best guesses of what they thought the R7 looked like. And one of them is actually pretty good. Like, it looks vaguely like the R7. It's got the side boosters. The other option is just like, what if it was thick?
Yeah, what if it was one stage?
Now, in the end, the Soviets apparently discovered that the Luna had been tampered with, but not before it was already long gone. Of the agents involved, most were awarded and went back to doing all of the deeply unethical stuff they normally did. DFS agent Silvetti, for his part, was denounced as a traitor for working with the CIA once the new Mexican president took office and had to flee to the United States, where he started glory hounding and wrote a book.
You hate to see it happen to such a nice person, you know?
I mean, on the one hand, he did work with the CIA. On the other hand, it's kind of rich because that was literally the whole point of the DFS. To point at one guy and go like, you worked for the CIA? Like, no shit, we all did.
No, you're going to be the sin eater for this.
That is in my job contract. So, everybody, that is the story of how the CIA stole a Soviet loon probe. How are we all feeling?
Yeah, incredible.
Amazing.
Okay, I will try and find more stories like that in the future.
It was cool, but I mean, they didn't really accomplish anything.
Yeah, the CIA got to go on a field trip.
Yeah, well, they don't need an excuse to do that.
CIA Mexican vacation.
I mean, there was a lot of vacationing going on. Luna got to go on a vacation. A bunch of NASA engineers were just like, hey, you're going on a vacation.
I bet they
the
made
arts
them
and
use.
crafts guy got to have his vacation interrupted to come into the office at 3 a.m.
Are you kidding? That was his moment right there.
So yeah, that has been this episode. November, thank you again for coming on. This has been so much fun.
I've had a fantastic time. Thank you so much, guys.
Seriously, it's been great.
This is the most fun I've had in a long time.
I'm gonna have brain worms about the brick all goddamn day.
Literally any time you guys want me to come on for anything, it would be a pleasure. So.
Absolutely. That is on the record. I'm not cutting that. Audience, you heard it. So yeah, audience, thank you for listening to another episode of Failure to Launch. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more like it, hit us up on Patreon. You can hear, like you normally hear a ripoff of Well, There's Your Problem. You can hear a ripoff of Kill James Bond. This week's minisode was supposed to be last week's minisode. Sorry, it got a little delay. We will be talking about the space pen and probably the dumbest urban legend about space that I hate so much.
Thank you to everyone who has signed up to support the show, and a big shout out to all of our top tier patrons. Our cyborg cats, our boss, Charlie, June, Lupe G, Matt, Spectre Cohen, and Tortilla Baron. Our space dogs are Akai is Best Guy, Ben L, Brandon M, Daddy Bongo, Double Time, Fractal Moonlight, Furious Luddite, Joe, John C, Lenswipe, Oliver, Sean H, Central Kazoo, Sean P, Sparks, Tom M, Barosh T, Winksmith, and Zim.
Albert count 26.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Failure to Launch. If you want to follow us, we are Failure to Launch on Blue Sky and FT LaunchPod on Instagram. We also post our episodes with visual aids at Failure to Launch Podcast on YouTube. All music was provided by DJ Danner.